Areena.
This week we make some sense of Finland's new unemployment rule, which could see people deported if they lose their jobs.
So the letter is, to be honest, it's intimidating, I guess, for anybody to receive because it says, we're going to withdraw your permit.
And we hear from the ministry official responsible for drafting this controversial legislation.
Also, it needs to be highlighted that this is no automatic cancellation, that automatically after the 3 months or 6 months have expired, then the person would somehow cease to be legally in the country.
Hello and welcome to All Points North. I'm Ronan Browne, and this week I'm going to look into a change to Finland's work permit laws that has caused no end of concern, confusion and consternation among Finland's immigrant population. So this law reform comes into effect next week on Wednesday the 11th of June, and at a very macro level it could mean that some people living in Finland who are on work-based residence permits could face deportation if they lose their jobs and fail to find new employment within a period of either 3 months or 6 months. Now, I should say right from the start that this is not a new policy as such. What's new is the time limit that is being placed on the requirement to find another job. However, this policy has proved to be very controversial ever since the government first announced it in their programme for government back in the summer of 2023. There was huge opposition at the time to the proposal even then, including a protest by hundreds of people outside the Audi Library in the centre of Helsinki, an event we actually covered on this podcast at the time.
We work in Finland, we work for Finland.
Did you feel bad when you heard about these plans?
I feel a bit unreal, bit surrealistic. Is it like really happening? And I understand that this is not final and it needs to be approved. But like we are living in fear, and as you can see, so many international coming here today.
Since then, the proposal has gone through a consultation round during which it was widely criticised. In fact, a total of 120 organisations responded to the government's call for comments during this consultation round, and only 2 of those 120 gave the proposal a positive review. However, despite all that, only very minor changes were made to the legislation. Now, a couple of days after the government announced that this new law was set to come into effect, Aya Ahmed wrote a post on LinkedIn that garnered a huge amount of attention. Aya is the co-founder of Turku Together, an NGO which seeks to bring Finns and foreigners together through shared interests and activities. So Aya wrote in this LinkedIn post that she had received a letter informing her that her working visa was going to be revoked. She added that she was feeling overwhelmed and heartbroken by this development, and that despite all her efforts to work hard and to contribute positively to Finnish society, it felt like none of it mattered. She ends the post by writing, "This is the reality of the new unemployment laws." So I had a chat with Aya this week, and I first asked her to describe how she felt when she opened that letter.
So the letter is, to be honest, it's intimidating, I guess, for anybody to receive because it says, we're going to withdraw your permit. And then they ask you like several questions. And one of them, what do you think about us putting a ban on you to come to Europe? And I'm like, What? What did I do? Like, what crime did I commit for you to ban me from Finland and Europe? Like, What? Why? And also they ask you your opinion about having your permit withdrawn. What do you think of that? And what ties do you have to Finland? And I have been reflecting on these questions a lot. Like, what ties do I have here? I'm building a family here. My wife is here. My dog is here. Our entire life is here. Hello. So, yeah.
What do you think about this policy in general, this 3-month or 6-month policy that is being brought in and has kind of been in practice already for a while? The impact that it's having, what do you see kind of on a broader level of this policy?
To be honest, I think it's just unfair. And I think, and the reason why I agreed to do this interview is just to bring the fact that we're human beings, we're not numbers. And I know people tell you, don't take it personal. And absolutely, of course, it's not personal, but it's also very personal too. Like it's my life and my family and my dog. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so if they kick me out, how am I going to pay rent? Should I pay rent? There is life here. There is a family here that you're breaking apart. There is just, so yes, of course, I understand it's not me targeting Aya, but it's really, the letter does target me in a way and completely shakes up your family and your whole trajectory of building a new life. So.
Yeah, absolutely. What then, what would you like to see happen? What are you hoping will come from this?
I really hope that people can see that there are, as I said, human beings at the end of these. It's not just the statistics that the government is using, I don't know how many thousand people. And people usually, when they leave work, like in my case, I have been working for over 2 years. So imagine coming in, did my master's, also worked while I'm doing my master's, and then starting a nonprofit just to show that I care. I want to be a part of this community. I want to be a part of the society. I want to learn the language. So there is so much we're putting out there to show that we want to belong. But then this new law just tells you that, no, we don't care about you if you're not working. And no, but my value is, our human value is more than that. And what is work? Is it income? What is work to you?
You posted then on LinkedIn. What prompted you to share it there?
Honestly, it's therapy.
Okay.
So therapy was because I have been taking care of myself, I really learned that sometimes in moments when you feel the most, at least that's my own healing journey. I was really I really thought the world is closing in, and I was really anxious. I have anxiety, and I was really anxious, and I was just in my living room. I can imagine myself and I just put it out as a scream of I can't believe this is happening. It's unfair. I worked so hard. I have been working so hard. Why?
Now, I think one of the reasons that Aya's post gained so much traction is because many other people were asking the very same question. Why? Why is the government introducing this rule at a time when Finland should be making it easier to live and work in the country, not more difficult? And many people have also pointed out that there are a lot of knock-on effects or unintended consequences of this new law. So I also spoke this week with Sarah Rostam Shirazi of Startup Refugees, which is an NGO that supports refugees, asylum seekers, and in fact all immigrants who come to Finland as they look to find a job or develop their skills or to integrate into Finnish society. So Sarah told me that they have heard from a wide range of people about the impact that this new law will have on their lives. Here is just one example.
And the other one was one of our clients that she was a woman and she was in an abusive relationship. And she was here on a family tie residence permit. And then we recommended, because she had a job, she was paying taxes and everything, but the residence permit was family tie, and we recommended her to change it into a work permit so that she can just get out of that relationship. And then she said, no, I won't switch because I'm afraid that I don't get a extension for my contract, and then what should I do after 3 months? So she had to tolerate that abusive relationship just because of this 3-month law.
Now, given that she works so closely with people who will be affected by this law, I also asked Sarah for her take on the impact the 3-month and the 6-month time limit will have.
So I would personally, I don't think that it's a sustainable or humane approach to attract internationals to the country. And these are all my intakes, like first as a career coach who is dealing with internationals and like living in like nowadays, like living in this international environment, dealing with clients, and also me myself as an international, my intake is that 3 months, 6 months is not reasonable to find job opportunities, not even for Finns themselves. In order to find a job opportunity, you have to go to career coaching sessions. If you are an international language training sessions, networking, which is really time consuming. Me, myself found this job after 2 years of networking. Like I was a student at the time, fortunately, but I was networking, trying to attend all the possible events in startup refugee, like NGO sector, so that after 2 years I could apply for a job that suited me. So this is like my personal intake, like 6 months, even 6 months is not a reasonable time. And also the thing is that the government nowadays, if there are any labor shortage, they have to invest more on integration and support for already existing international experts in all the things that I mentioned, like career coaching, language training, like all sort of networking events. But what we are witnessing nowadays is that they are actually cutting fundings from social sector and the organizations that can actually help immigrants and like into newcomers to integrate into the society. I can see that whereas all the internationals, they willingly want to integrate into the society. If I saw that like people are also not so interested in integrating into the society, I would have given the right for all these things. But the thing is that all the internationals, they want to integrate, and working is the best way to integrate into society. But to start a job in Finland, you really need time.
And that was Sarah Rostam Shirazi there of Startup Refugees. Now, one word that I heard time and again in relation to this new law is confusion. Confusion about who it affects, confusion about why it is being brought in, and in particular confusion about the 3-month and the 6-month aspects. So I'm going to try and clear up some of that confusion now. The legislation has been drafted by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and it's part of the government's wide-ranging changes to Finland's employment and immigration laws. This amendment applies only to non-EU citizens living in Finland on so-called fixed-term, work-based residence permits, which the ministry estimates is about 50,000 people. And that means it does not affect people on student visas or family visas or people with a permanent residence permit, and it also does not include citizens of other EU countries. But for the 50,000 people that it does affect, the very literal interpretation of the law means that they have either 3 months or 6 months to find a new job if they find themselves unemployed. And why is it 3 months for some and 6 months for others? Well, this was one of the few changes made to the legislation after the consultation round. The period was extended for certain people, and here are examples of those certain persons. Workers who are described as specialists, which is defined by the ministry as experts working in highly skilled jobs that require special expertise and have a monthly salary of at least €3,827. They will have 6 months to find another job. This 6-month stipulation also applies to people who have lived in Finland for longer than 2 years with one of these work-based residence permits, as well as people who work in middle or top-level management of a Finnish company. Now, there is another line in the ministry's explanation of the new law, which is very much open to interpretation, and I'll read it out now. It says, if the holder of the permit does not find new work and there are no other grounds for staying in Finland, the permit will be cancelled. Okay, so to get more clarity on that and on other aspects of the law as well, I spoke with Katri Niskanen of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. who is the head of the team at the ministry responsible for preparing this legislation. And so I first asked her, what are these other grounds for staying in Finland?
Well, any other grounds for residence, for instance, if they have gotten a spouse that resides in Finland, then they could apply for a family-based residence permit, or if they have begun studies in Finland, they could then apply for a student's residence permit, etc. So this, of course, happens all the time, that people can change their ground for residence. So if they have come for work and then they lose the job, then of course there's always the avenue of changing the grounds for the next permit if the circumstances so allow. So this is sort of stating the obvious, but so this new or these amendments do not change anything in this regard. So this basically just the purpose of these amendments is to clarify what the impact of unemployment is. So already until today, it has been possible, and actually the meaning is that when the permit is issued based on work, the work should be continuous. Otherwise, the permit then would be ultimately cancelled. But then there has been no rule as to what the period of job seeking would be. And now this this also protects the job seeker in the sense that they have at least the 3 or 6 months to look for a new job. And only then, after this period has elapsed, would then the potential cancellation begin. And also, it needs to be highlighted that this is no automatic cancellation that automatically after the 3 months or 6 months have expired, then the person would somehow cease to be legally in the country. So that's not the case, but it just means that it will trigger the cancellation procedure in the immigration service. And then they will hear the person, indeed hear if there are other grounds for residence or what the circumstances are. And then if there are no further grounds to reside in Finland, then the permit would be cancelled. But this will take some time.
Yeah.
So effectively, it will be more than 6 or 3 months to look for a new job.
Okay, yeah, and that's really good to clarify, because I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from, that people think that as soon as the 3-month period is up, that's it, they're out. And so maybe it would be good to actually expand on that. So say, for example, if I am one of these people affected and I lose my job on the 1st of June, so what would then happen on the 1st of September? What is the process?
So normally then lose the job, it is the obligation of your employer to let the immigration service know that this has happened. Within 2 weeks of the loss of employment, they will have the obligation to normally electronically inform the immigration service that this has happened. And then there will be a calculation then automatically of that time in the system. And once the period has expired, then normally this would then trigger set an alarm for the officials in the immigration service that now the period has expired. And then indeed, then normally, of course, if there's a new job, then the immigration service should also know about that, because the employer has the obligation to inform if they have hired a foreigner in Finland. So normally then they would also know if there is no need to continue calculating the 3 or 6 months. But if no new job has been found, then the cancellation procedure would then begin. But then, of course, it's very much a question of resources at the immigration service. When there's an official that can then actually take up your case and start investigating it, so it can be, I think it was up to 3-4 months. The situation of today at the immigration service, and then this, of course, is indeed very much dependent on the resources at the immigration service and how they prioritize the cases. But it will not be immediately.
Okay, so I just want to clarify one further point about these changes. If a person loses their job and searches for a new one, they must find one that corresponds to the requirements of the specific permit that they hold. So the salary limit for an employed person is €1,600 per month, while, as we mentioned, it is €3,827 per month for a specialist. Now, if we take the example of a specialist losing their job and they find a lower skilled role, they would still have to apply for a new permit that would match that new role. That is the case now, and it will be a case after these changes have been brought in next week. But just thinking back to something that Aya Ahmed said about how receiving the letter felt so intimidating, And also what Sara of Startup Refugees told me about the fear that many people feel about the impact of this new law. I also asked Katri Niskanen if she understood why there was so much concern among the immigrant population about the terms of this new law.
I think it's very understandable that there are fears. Always when we have amendments to the legislation that have an impact on people that are already here, it feels unfair that you suddenly change the conditions in the middle of the game. I understand that it can feel unfair and it can be very scary when your own right to reside can be put into question. So definitely I understand it. In terms of the actual impact of this rule, we're not expecting this to somehow change our policy completely or change the everyday lives of people who come to work in Finland completely. Because as I said already now, the idea has been that if you lose the job, then you will ultimately also lose the permit, because that was your reason for residing in Finland. And probably these people also have an interest to leave the country ultimately if they cannot be re-employed. So indeed, 3 and 6 months, it can be argued that it's not a super long time to find a new job, especially in the current situation. But the situation hopefully will improve in that regard. And indeed, it's not an automatic cancellation. It doesn't mean that you have to leave right after the 3 or 6 months. There is still some room after that. So I think all of these sort of considerations should make it less dramatic. And I also think that it's very important to look at this in the bigger policy context of what we're trying to do with our Talent Boost program, that we're trying to make Finland relevant, attractive, welcoming for international talents, workers, specialists of all categories. And I think the more we get the Finnish working life to be welcoming for internationals, the less dramatic this rule will end up being, and people can actually find new employment and continue their residence in Finland. So I think it's a welcome clarification to legislation that we will now know what the impact of unemployment will be, and we will guarantee the period to look for a job. But of course, it's important that we have a working life that welcomes these people, and that we can reduce the prejudice and all the limitations that there continue to exist for people who are non-Finnish or Swedish speakers, basically, to find employment.
And that was Katri Niskanen of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. But before we move on, I just want to go back now to Aya Ahmed, who wrote that post on LinkedIn that drew so many people's attention to the impending introduction of this new 3-month and 6-month rule. I was very interested to know what the reaction had been to her post on LinkedIn.
I honestly, I'm really grateful, because I know the work we have been doing with Turku Together has been impactful and it helped people, but I didn't think, I don't know, it's so heartwarming, the amount of support, and people are like, we're going to get you a job. You're not leaving. We can't lose you. And it's so beautiful to see. And I'm like, this is why I love Finland so much. I love them. I love the people here. They are human and they do care. And the support I got was not just from internationals or expats, or it was from everybody. And they're like, no, this is unfair. You've been working so hard, and they see the impact and they're like, but how come? And everybody is just like, no, you have to go together. No, why? And I'm like, me too. I'm like, I don't know. I have no answers to you.
And I am actually very happy to report that Aya did indeed find a new job, very quickly in fact, on the back of the support she received from the wider community. And she has also started a group on LinkedIn called Finland is Our Home Too, which she says she hopes will bring together people affected by this new law so that they can help and support each other. So before we close this section, a reminder that we always want to hear your opinion on the subjects we cover here on All Points North. Here's how to get in touch.
You can join the conversation too. We want to hear what's on your mind. Just leave us a voice note or text on WhatsApp. Our number is +358 44 421 0909.
And now for a quick roundup of what else has been making the headlines in Finland this week. And in keeping with the general theme of today's podcast episode, we start with the news that the Finnish government is planning to tighten the conditions for people seeking permanent residence permits. The new rules will require applicants to have a longer period of residency before being eligible, have some proficiency in Finnish and Swedish, and they must have worked in the country for a certain period of time. The government submitted this proposal to Parliament earlier this week. Meanwhile, Finland's government ministers, including all party leaders of the ruling coalition, took part in a 1-hour anti-racism training session this week. The training was organised after a series of racism scandals involving ministers from the Finns party and centred around a presentation by a research professor from Public Health Authority THL, which was entitled 3 Myths About Racism in Finland. And staying with politics, Yle's latest voter survey found that the opposition Social Democratic Party still maintains a clear lead over the government parties. The SDP has the support of 1 in 4 voters, according to the latest poll, with Prime Minister Petteri Orpo's National Coalition Party in second place on 21.5%, while backing for the Finns party has fallen even further to around 10%. And in this week's other news, police in the west of Finland are searching for a family of 10 who have been missing for more than a year. A court had ordered that the family's children be taken into care by local child protective services before they all disappeared. Police suspect that the parents took the children and fled the area. And turning to healthcare, an Yle investigation this week revealed that over 600,000 public healthcare appointments were missed last year, wasting tens of millions of euros in taxpayer money. In addition to the cost, these missed and uncancelled appointments can contribute to congestion and longer waiting times in social and healthcare services. And finally, sightings of wolves have more than doubled across Finland during the first half of this year. That's according to the Finnish wildlife agency Metsähallitus. And with sightings on the increase, a majority of MPs have told Yle that they would be prepared to downgrade the protective status of wolves from strictly protected to protected. And that's it for another episode of All Points North. Zina will be here next week to take you on a journey back to the summer of 1975, when Helsinki hosted the CSCE Summit, an event that became a defining moment for Finland's role in international relations. Now, unfortunately, the weather outlook for this weekend doesn't look great, but if you are looking for something to watch, then I can recommend the new Count of Monte Cristo miniseries, which is streaming on Yle Areena. I do remember reading the book in school, and it is a wonderful story. But that is all we have time for today. Thanks very much to our audio engineer, Tuomas Vauhkonen, for putting the show together, and to you for listening to and supporting All Points North. Bye for now.